7 months after the divorce papers were signed, stamped, and sealed, he saw her again in the most ordinary place, on the most ordinary afternoon, and everything inside him broke open at once. The grocery store lights buzzed faintly above the aisles, carts rattled, children cried, and somewhere near the produce section, time stopped when his eyes landed on the unmistakable curve beneath her coat. She was pregnant. His ex-wife was pregnant. And for a long, breathless second, the world tilted, because he knew with a certainty that hurt more than anger ever had that the story he thought was finished was not finished at all. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment to pause with me here. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of doing the right thing when no one expects it, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this exist because people still care. 7 months earlier, he had become a single dad not by choice but by necessity. The marriage hadn't exploded in some dramatic betrayal or screaming match. It had simply eroded, day by day, under the weight of exhaustion, unspoken resentments, and two people who stopped knowing how to reach for each other. When the divorce was finalized, he moved into a smaller apartment with peeling paint and thin walls, close enough to his daughter's school to walk but far enough from his old life that it felt like exile. He learned quickly that single fatherhood was a series of small humiliations and quiet victories. Burnt dinners, mismatched socks, forgotten permission slips, and the hollow ache that came at night when his daughter finally slept and the apartment went silent. He told himself he was doing fine. He had to. His daughter needed stability, not a father who crumbled. He worked longer hours, packed lunches with notes folded inside, and learned how to braid hair by watching shaky videos late at night. Every morning, he put on a face that said everything was under control. But the truth lived in the pauses, when he caught himself setting out 2 mugs instead of 1, when he reached for his phone to text her about something funny their daughter had said, and when he remembered there was no one on the other end anymore. Seeing his ex-wife again shattered that fragile balance. She stood there comparing fruit prices like any other shopper, but the pregnancy was undeniable now that he saw it. His first thought was a cruel one, sharp and unwanted, followed immediately by guilt. His second thought was confusion. They had been divorced 7 months. His mind did the math even though he didn't want it to. The conclusion hit him like a physical blow. This baby was not his. And yet, the sight of her, older somehow, more tired, her face thinner but her eyes softer, sent a surge of memories crashing through him. He didn't approach her right away. He couldn't. Instead, he watched from the end of the aisle, feeling like an intruder in a life that used to be his. He noticed details he might have missed once, the way she leaned on the cart for support, the faint tremor in her hands, the dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. This wasn't the glowing pregnancy people like to imagine. This was something heavier. Their divorce had been quiet, almost polite, which somehow made it worse. There was no villain to blame, no single moment to point to and say this is where it all went wrong. They had both been tired. They had both felt unseen. When she asked for space, he gave it, thinking it was temporary. When she asked for more independence, he mistook it for rejection. By the time they realized they were drifting, the distance between them felt impossible to cross. After the divorce, he heard rumors through mutual acquaintances. She was seeing someone else. She was struggling. She moved out of state, then moved back. He tried not to ask questions. It was easier to focus on survival than on what-ifs. But now, standing in that grocery store, those what-ifs roared back to life. When she finally noticed him, the shock on her face mirrored his own. Time stretched thin as they stood there, two people bound by history and separated by choice. He expected anger, maybe awkward politeness. What he didn't expect was the flash of fear that crossed her expression before she masked it. She looked like someone caught in a storm without shelter. Life after that encounter refused to go back to normal. He couldn't unsee what he'd seen. His daughter asked innocent questions about why he seemed distracted, and he gave careful answers that skirted the truth. At night, he lay awake replaying that moment, wondering what her life looked like now, wondering who the father was, and wondering why the idea of her facing pregnancy alone made his chest ache. The turning point came quietly, the way most important things do. He ran into her again weeks later, this time outside the pediatrician's office. He was there for his daughter's checkup. She was sitting alone on a bench, one hand resting protectively over her belly, the other gripping a folder stuffed with papers. There was no escaping each other this time. Circumstances forced proximity, and proximity forced honesty. He learned, not all at once but in fragments, that the man she had been with was gone, that the pregnancy had been unplanned, that she was scared in a way she had never been before. Pride had kept her silent, and shame had built walls where bridges used to be. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't even implying it, but he could see it in the way her shoulders sagged when she thought no one was looking. He went home that day and sat at his kitchen table long after his daughter fell asleep. He stared at the scratches on the surface, each one a memory of a meal, a laugh, a life half-lived. He asked himself questions that had no easy answers. Was it his responsibility? Did kindness mean reopening wounds? Could he offer support without confusing hope? The simplest truth rose above the noise. Whatever had happened between them, she was carrying a child into a world that was already hard, and he knew what it meant to be afraid and alone. What he did next surprised everyone, including himself. He didn't make grand declarations or dramatic gestures. He showed up. He offered practical help first. Rides to appointments when she was too tired to drive, groceries left quietly at her door, watching her older niece occasionally when she needed rest. He involved his daughter gently, carefully, framing it not as fixing the past but as being kind in the present. Children understand kindness instinctively, and his daughter accepted this new shape of their world with a grace that humbled him. People talked, of course. Friends questioned his motives. Family warned him about getting hurt again. Strangers made assumptions they didn't bother to hide, but he learned quickly that doing the right thing often looks wrong from the outside. What mattered was the slow, steady change he saw in her. The tension eased from her face. Her laughter returned in small, cautious bursts. She began to sleep better, eat better, hope again. As the months passed, the pregnancy progressed, and with it came moments that felt unbearably intimate and achingly familiar. Sitting in waiting rooms, assembling furniture, folding tiny clothes that smelled like new beginnings. He was careful not to cross lines, careful not to promise what he wasn't sure he could give. But somewhere along the way, he realized something had shifted inside him. The anger he thought he still carried had dissolved into something softer, something like understanding. The night her labor began was chaotic and raw. He was the one she called, not because of obligation, but because trust had quietly rebuilt itself between them. Hospitals have a way of stripping life down to its essentials. Fear, hope, pain, love, they all coexist under harsh lights and steady beeping. When the baby was born, small and perfect and impossibly fragile, something in him broke open again, but this time it was not grief. It was awe. He held that child with hands that had learned both loss and resilience. He looked at his ex-wife, exhausted and radiant, and saw not the woman who left or the man who failed, but two imperfect people who had grown in different directions and somehow found their way back to kindness. The baby was not his by blood, but in that moment he understood that family was bigger than biology. It was choice, it was presence, it was love expressed through action. Life did not magically become easy after that. There were still boundaries to navigate, still scars that ached on quiet days. But there was also something new, a shared purpose rooted not in the past but in the future. They learned how to co-parent in a way that honored both truth and compassion. His daughter gained a sibling not defined by labels, and she embraced that role with fierce protectiveness. If this story has touched something in you, if it has reminded you of the power of showing up when it would be easier to walk away, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive. Just before we reach the end, I want to ask you something personal. Please leave a comment below sharing whether you believe people can rewrite their stories through kindness. Your words matter more than you know. 7 months after a divorce, a single dad saw his ex-wife pregnant and stood at a crossroads he never expected to face. He could have turned away. He could have chosen bitterness, pride, or self-protection. Instead, he chose compassion. And in doing so, he didn't just change her life or that baby's life. He changed his own. Sometimes the most beautiful endings come from beginnings we never planned, and the bravest thing we can do is love anyway.